Hello, my name is Rodincoil, and you are listening to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. Hello there, and welcome back to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts, with me, your host, Rodincoil, and thank you for joining me. So, we move forward into 1982, and a couple of nights out with the band that I played drums with, a band from Sheffield called The Box, and focusing on a couple of shows we did with Stephen Mallinder, guesting from Cabaret Voltaire. Stephen has been kind enough to contribute to this podcast, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you, Mal. And we'll hear from Mal a little bit later. But here we go. It's The Box at the Marples pub in Sheffield on the 4th of March, and then on the 19th of April at Heaven nightclub in London. Here we go. Fancy a drink? One of the many things that I like about Stardust, Michael Apted's 1974 film about the rise and fall of rock star Jim McLean, played by David Essex, is Adam Faith's character, Mike Menery. Mike is Jim's loyal road manager, fixer and factotum. And with that apparently innocuous invitation, fancy a drink, Mike can make characters disappear. People who have been obstructive or have outlived their usefulness. Be they concert promoters, early benefactors, or surplus to requirement band members. Whatever it takes to ensure that Jim's path to superstardom is unimpeded. The Box doesn't have a mic. Indeed, The Box doesn't have any kind of manager. Keenly independent, we're innately suspicious of anyone who might want to turn us into ultravox. Which is principled and admirable, to a point. For when it becomes apparent that recently recruited frontman Ken, he of the lovely quiff but iffy vocals, isn't going to make the grade, no one wants to be the one to sack him. Us being easygoing artistic types, we're squeamish about face-to-face confrontation. After much debate, with the clinching argument being that Ken was his idea in the first place, it falls to bass player Terry to ask the hapless lad if he fancies a drink. 6 months' worth of rehearsals down the drain. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Also going through changes are Cabaret Voltaire. When Chris Watson, sitting in the Beehive on a Sunday night with his smashing partner Margaret, tells me he is leaving the cabs to go and work at Tyne Tees Television, I nearly choke on my dry roasted nuts. He must be mad. The band are riding high on the critical acclaim for their new album, Red Mecca, which has just been released on Rough Trade, one of the coolest record labels in the world. I'd love The Box to be on Rough Trade. Why would you put all that aside to go and do sound for Northern Life in a Middlesbrough telly studio? Box guitarist Paul lives in the same suburban house as Mal from the Cabs. 217 Upperthorpe is a handsome, detached abode near the top of the steep hill that links Infirmary Road to Crooks Moor. Given its Sherpa-friendly altitude and lack of central heating, this striking Victorian pile is cold, goldfish bowl freezing over cold in the winter months. Particularly the kitchen, which feels like it's twinned with Spitsbergen once the clocks have gone back. Close to the university, the area is popular with students. So, like many other nearby properties, the house is populated by young men drawn to Sheffield for its cheap beer, cheaper buses and flourishing music scene. 217 is known to its residents and friends as the Hula Cooler, after the B-side of Roxy Music's 1973 single, Street Life. Also living there are Ron and Al, two lads from the northeast, and Mark from the home counties. The latter three have a band called Hula, named after their home. Also resident are two cats, Morticia and Greta, and a ghost called Henry. It's a December night when we invite Mal down to see the box rehearse. The cab studio space at Western Works is positively salubrious compared to our ramshackle workshop, which is reached by climbing 2 flights of rickety wooden stairs and traversing slippery duckboards nailed to a sloping roof. Here to pick up the story is Mal. Over to you, Mal.
My name is Stephen Mallinder. You'll know me from such bands as Cabaret Voltaire and Wrangler and things like that. But at that time, I was in the cabs and I was drafted in to do a couple of gigs with the box. My memories of it are, firstly, the rehearsals, which Sheffield was always full of little kind of dilapidated, out of workplaces. So the old kind of buffing rooms and sort of little mesters rooms. I remember the box, we rehearsed in one that was just at the top of the most rickety, scary wooden staircase. I mean, for anybody who wants to imagine it, think of the David Lean film with Fagin's Lair in Oliver Twist. That was the rehearsal room we used. I was amazed we actually managed to get up there and back down again without losing all the equipment and it kind of falling to the floor and us going through the stairs and dying of broken backs. But we made it anyway. I do remember it being quite, as a vocalist, and that was all I did because I wasn't playing bass. They had a bass player who the connections for myself were obviously Clock DVA. Because I was such a big fan of Clock DVA, we all were. We'd done gigs with them, famous sort of Lyceum gig with TG and Zev and Non. Also, Terry Todd was an old school friend of mine from when we were kids. We went to De La Salle, we went to the Catholic College, so I knew him. And Paul Woodger and I lived in the haunted house, Hula Cooler, the house where Hula took their name from and which was notoriously eerie and spooky and stained glass windows and a ghost called Henry Cooper. And I think that's probably why I ended up doing it. I was always amenable to things, so if you just said, would you do that, Mal? I went, yeah, great, okay, I'll have a go at that. So I did it.
Mal likes the herky-jerky, het-up racket we make, and offers to help out on vocals. Nothing permanent, more like a footballer going out on loan because he wants more game time, even if it means dropping down the division. I'm delighted. Band practice is fun again. I can look up from battering my drum kit and see Mal, Stephen Mallinder of Cabaret Voltaire, hissing and snarling into a mic just a couple of feet away. The studio's old, convexed brick walls, seemingly bonded by soot and swarf, soak up our rumpus. For his part, Mal is enjoying the change of scenery. Once he's worked out that singing over our hectic music is like trying to plant a flag on ever-shifting sands, the place you thought was the start has somehow moved. He's happy to be mixing it up in the melee with Charlie and Paul, harrying and stinging, a mosquito in the maelstrom. Mal's rhythmic vocal style, which always sounds to me like he is passing top-secret information through tiny gaps in the Berlin Wall, takes on an aggressive rasp, which suits the boxer's hurly-burly. The other challenge for Mal is the lyrics. Cabaret Voltaire have a track on Red Mecca called 1,000 Ways, which lasts for 10 minutes and 25 seconds. Thus, the song length exchange rate in January 1982 is 4 box songs for 1,000 Ways. Cue Mal having to produce Hunter S. Thompson-like torrents of screed as new songs emerge with titles like Slip and Slant and Hazard Rules Your Movement. Here's Mal again.
Having to write vocals for a set, which the guys were on a really kind of purple patch of being very creative with Charlie and Widge and with Roger. So we had, they had this real sign of burst. And I remember going, so there's about 15 numbers in the set because they were all very short bursts. It was very, very kind of beef-arty, and I loved that. It was great. So, but it also meant I had my work cut out getting through lots of tracks. So I remember a very intense few weeks writing lyrics and pulling it all together. So I actually, had something to sort of present at the gigs. I think it worked. I think it was part of the whole kind of period where people just jumped in and did things. So I think in its own way, but it's a lovely kind of memory to have had that.
By February, we feel ready to play in public. The Marples pub overlooking Fitzallen Square has been hosting gigs in its upstairs function room for a few years. I played my first gig with DVA there in the summer of 1979. With the Lead Mill currently closed awaiting funding, and the Limit now attracting a trendy new romantic crowd, the Marples, described by one local sage as the kind of place you wipe your feet on the way out, is back in favour with local bands and punk rockers. Both Crass and the UK subs played here recently. Back to Mal for a bit more about the Marples.
An old 1940s, 30s and 40s dance hall in the centre of Sheffield, which, after being bombed by the Nazis, was taken over by heavy drinkers in the sort of 60s and 70s, and by the time we played there, it was quite a rough place. But they'd opened up their doors and their blinkers to bands playing there, and a few bands did play there. So we played there on the 4th of March.
The room has been reconfigured since I last played here. There's a low stage now. Having been warmed up by eager tyros Chak, the audience, with lots of familiar faces dotted about, regards us with a mixture of curiosity and expectation. We go in hard. 11 songs in about 30 minutes. One instrumental for Mal to catch his breath. No chat, no gaps, no encore. I've come up with a slogan which aims to capture the essence of what we're about. It's not the way it holds together, it's the way it falls apart. I think it sounds good. That said, if I were pushed, I couldn't tell you exactly what it's supposed to mean. Something about teetering on the edge of collapse and trying to capture that moment, I reckon. Anyway, I've sneakily printed 50 sheets of A4 at work, with this manifesto lovingly worked up in letraset. As we leave the stage, I toss them out into the throng. Rock theatre. Mal then takes off for a trip to Japan with Cabaret Voltaire for some live dates. Richard and himself now joined by hula drummer Al. To me, 21 years old and still no passport, this seems incredibly exotic and intrepid. Then, something very strange happens between Mal's departure and his return in April. A war starts. Who goes to war with Argentina? Football cows and tango. It's so surreal it would make a good sketch on Not the 9 o'clock news. A dispute over an archipelago 8,000 miles away, where penguins and sheep outnumber the human population of less than 2,000 souls. Who goes to war with Argentina? A brutal government responsible for swinging spending cuts, manufacturing industries in decline and high unemployment, a Prime Minister unpopular within her party and behind in the opinion polls. Margaret Thatcher. The Falkland Islands War dominates the news every day, but it's a long, long way from home. And once the Argentine army has occupied Port Stanley and some outnumbered Royal Marines have been captured, nothing much is happening while the task force is being readied. I wonder if the phony war of 1939-1940, which we studied at school, was like this. It's just there, along with Bucks Fizz at number 1 and Ipswich Town challenging Liverpool at the top of the league. The Box and Mal head down to London to play at Heaven. Paul, Charlie and myself played here with DVA when we rumbled and howled in front of a cellar full of goths, mostly there for headliners Bauhaus. The dark catacombs, S&M rooms and members-only recesses tucked away in this gay club under the arches of Charing Cross Station have lost their surprise for us. We're headlining tonight. Could the Box top the bill at a London venue of this size and stature without Mal from the Cabs? Doubtful. The promoter certainly thinks not. Clock DVA and Cabaret Voltaire move on, declare the adverts for the gig. Back up in Sheffield, Richard Kirk is not impressed.
I don't think Kirky was very happy with me because we were in the middle of doing the cabs. He was like, what are you doing those things? But I think he came around quite quickly because we had the Boxer on the label and Kirky did some remixes for them.
Also on the bill are Liverpool band Send No Flowers and synth boffin Thomas Dolby, whose debut single, Europa and the Pirate Twins, I liked, and bought on 12-inch from GT News in Hillsborough for 99p. One-man band Dolby is playing in a different part of the club. Hemmed in by a variety of keyboards, oscillators and blinking circuitry, he seems oblivious to the thirsty crowd at the bar, which, in turn, pays little attention to the bloke in specs with all the presence of a British telecom engineer who's just been called out to rewire an errant telephone junction box. Martin Fry is here, just 9 weeks away from the life-changing release of ABC's Lexicon of Love album. Compared to the DVA and Bauhaus gig here 2 years ago, this is a whole lot more enjoyable. True, it's not as busy, but at least the people are here to see us this time. Free from bass guitar duties, Mal does his knee-bobbing, head-nodding dance behind his mic. Either side of him, Charlie's sax and Paul's guitar quarrel, then concur. Behind them, Terry and myself stoke the furnace. 12 songs this time, 35 minutes. No chat, no gaps, no encore. The following week brings glowing live reviews in both The Enemy and Melody Maker. We've made a splash. However, Cabaret Voltaire have UK tour dates coming up with Eric Random, so Mal's work here is done. A maritime pilot, he has launched the good ship Box and guided it into open waters. We owe him several drinks, but not the mic kind. Let's leave the last word to Mal.
brilliant memories of all that period. And as I say, it was quite short, brief, quite intense. They moved on, and the rest is history with Peter Hope. So I hope that helped Roger fill in a little bit of a gap for that period. And big love to Charlie and to Paul and to Terry and all the members of the band. So a very fun time in Sheffield when everybody was jumping in and doing loads of things and working with each other. It was a good time to be there.
You have been listening to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts with me, your host, Rodincoil. Thank you to Stephen Mallinder. Thanks also to Rionagh for the artwork and to Simon Elliott Kemp for the intro and outro music. Thanks to Paul and Charlie for the memory jogs, and thank you to Nigel Floyd. Join me again next time for another episode from My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. This is Roger Quayle saying thank you and bye-bye.